Well, again, welcome to the Reed and Christine Halliday Executive Lecture Series. We're pleased to have with us today Todd Santiago, who is president of 2GIG, a local company that's actually doing some pretty good stuff. Mr. Santiago joined 2GIG in 2008 as company president, and as its third employee, he assumed responsibility for the business and marketing strategy of the organization, leading 2GIG to become the fastest growing company in the residential security manufacturing industry, and as a result, the fastest growing company in Utah County. He has overseen the successful launch of 2GIG's Go Control home management system, as well as the build-out of a robust engineering, finance, marketing, and logistics organization. Prior to joining 2GIG, Mr. Santiago was partner and general manager of Signature Academies in Boise, Idaho, and vice president and general manager at NCH Corporation in Irving, Texas. He holds a degree in English from Brigham Young University and an MBA from a little-known school called Harvard Business School. That's a bit of a joke. You're allowed to laugh now. Thank you. Well done. Good job. Checking to see if you're listening. I had the privilege of being Todd. Boy, it's been a few months now at their offices, and we had just a delightful conversation about a number of subjects, and to be truthful, I've rarely met somebody who kind of can take conversations in a direction that I didn't think they would ever go, and yet bring you back into where you were when you started. And so kind of the breadth that he brings to this conversation today, I think will be truly meaningful for you as you enjoy presentation. So with that, over to you, Todd, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dean Wright. It's been a long time since I've been on campus, but I'm glad you're here. I'm actually excited to be here. I'm surprised to see a few people. I guess it's mandatory that you're here because I didn't expect anybody to show up, so this is actually great. I've got a few things I want to share with you, and then we'll hopefully have some time for questions at the end, but I've been on a pretty exciting ride these last few years at 2GIG, and I thought what I would do today is tell my story a little bit, go back to the beginning of kind of my career and share some things, because it wasn't long ago that I was, in your seat, sitting where you are and trying to make some decisions and figure out what I wanted to do. So who is 2GIG and what is 2GIG? We manufacture residential and soon-to-be commercial security products. So we compete with Honeywell and GE. If any of you heard of Vivint, I'm sure you all have, and all the others. How many of you guys have actually done summer sales? Okay, so I'm speaking to an audience that kind of understands the world that I live in. So we make all the equipment. Vivint uses us exclusively. We have about 2,000 other dealers as well throughout the US and Canada. We're moving into Mexico this year. So we make all the products that go into these installations for security. Primarily residential right now, but eventually commercial, and we have a few other applications we're looking at as well. So from our signature product, which is our panel, to all the peripherals that are used in the installation, and thermostats and locks that we procure from other partners and then distribute those for them. So this is what we do. It's an exciting business, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as I go through the presentation. So a little bit about me. This picture, they're actually all mine. I've got 8 kids, an incredible wife. It doesn't feel like it's been very long since I was sitting right here. Actually, UVCC was not this big as it is now, but time has flown. I have 8 incredible kids. My oldest is turning 17 next week, a junior in high school, and then my baby's 5 months. So time flies. Part of my comments today will be around this, around family, about priorities and balance, because this is the most important thing in my life right here. But I've also had to try to figure out how to balance this with 8 kids and also try to build a career, which has taken me all over the country and international travel. And the last 3 weeks I've been at my desk 3 days. So it's a challenge, but that's part of the thing I want to talk to you about today. So the real reason I think I was asked to come and speak today is I'm a Wolverine. Check out that picture right there. I didn't realize I had a mullet, but I think I did. So That's back in style now. I guess I could have that hairdo now and fit in pretty good. So back in 1990, I went to Provo High School, local, came and played at Utah Valley. I enjoyed reading about myself here. Tough competitor, good shooter, hard-nosed. I mean, I could read this stuff all day. It's awesome. Literally a bulldog on the floor, point guard. I had a great time at UVCC at the time, and now it's Utah Valley, so it's incredible to come back actually and see what this place has become. This is where, in my opinion, my views and my outlook on what I want to do educationally and professionally started was right here. And so I figured that's probably why I'm here. Let me tell a few things here. So there's a few bullet points here. What do these things have in common? This is actually my roadmap. This is my story right here. From UVU to BYU, Harvard, English major, LSAT, GMAT, pest control. That's how I got started. High-tech software, chemicals, real estate, high-tech hardware, where I am now. How do all those things relate? They really don't. They're related because that's my story. When I was back in college, I thought, okay, how am I going to get to where I want to be? I wanted to be successful. I wanted to marry a good-looking girl, which I have. Hopefully she's here. I think she's somewhere if she found this place. I wanted to get a hot wife. I wanted to have a great family. And I wanted to be successful in business, or I wanted to be a high-powered attorney. That's what I wanted to do. I know I've accomplished the hot wife, great family, and a successful career, but I never would have imagined I would have taken this path. So part of my message today also is, I'm not convinced that you have to know exactly where you're going. You want to get somewhere, but your path is going to be different. Everybody's path is different, and you have to be prepared to take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves. So, first bullet here, the Bronx to UVU to BYU to Harvard. My dad was born in the Bronx. He might actually be here as well. My dad was born and raised in the Bronx. His parents are Puerto Rican, and he had what I call an amazing youth and life experience. He battled on the streets of the Bronx, and when he was old enough to join the military, he joined the military and went to Alaska, and was there where he joined the LDS Church and moved to Provo, Utah, and he met my mother the first day of school at BYU, who was from Erda, which is a big suburb of Tooele. She was the rodeo queen of Tooele. So, city boy, Tooele, Utah. My dad's ticket was education. So from a young age, my dad has been pounding me about the need to go pursue your education and get as much education as you possibly can. I had some big decision points in my life that dealt with education and money. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. I've always sided on education. Go get your education, and that's why it's important you guys are here and that you continue to pursue your education. I wanted to go to law school. I was an English major because I knew I needed to improve my reading and writing skills. So while I was at school, I needed a good job. I met my wife, hung up the basketball shoes when I got back from my mission, where I served in Colombia. I came back, hung up the basketball shoes, and decided to start focusing on school, wanted to improve my reading and writing skills to go to law school. Taking all those classes, heard about this summer gig, go sell pest control, of all things. So I did it. I needed some money. That was back before it was popular to do these summer jobs. I went and did it, and it fundamentally changed my outlook on what I wanted to do. It sounds kind of crazy. Sometimes I'm sure some of you think, summer sales, well, I mean, I'm just going to go out and make some money, but how is that useful? It completely changed and transformed my career path. So I went out, I actually managed a group of sales reps and sold some, and phenomenal experience. Came back, took over all the recruiting for, at the time it was called Apex Marketing, took over all the recruiting, hiring the managers, training the managers, all things operational at Apex Marketing. So a very entrepreneurial environment. Went there, and then I had a decision point. I applied to business school. My dad continued to ask, so what are you going to do? Is this what you're going to do for your life? It was a great opportunity. I was making good money. I applied to 3 or 4 business schools, got into a couple of them. My number one choice was Harvard. I sat there and thought, okay, what do I do? I've got a ticket into Harvard Business School, and I'm sitting on 15% ownership of Apex Marketing. Some of you may have read in the news that Apex was just sold for $2 billion. I'm not a math major, but 15%, $2 billion, it's kind of a big number, right? So, of course, I wouldn't have any idea at that point what it would be worth, but I would still have a nice big chunk of ownership. But I had to make a decision. Am I going to stay here and do that, or am I going to go and make sure that I build my human capital, right? Which is a big part of what I want to talk to you about today, is human capital. So I decided I got to go. I got to go to Harvard. I got to go take advantage of this opportunity, go and get $100,000+ in debt with a couple of young kids, go back there and leave Apex Marketing at the time and go pursue what I felt was the most important thing I could possibly do, which was my education. So I went back, watched from the side a little bit as Vivint continued, or they became Vivint as they grew and became what they've become, but went back to school, had a phenomenal opportunity to learn and grow there at Harvard, and got over the intimidation factor pretty quickly. I was going to school. The first year at Harvard, you have 90 students in your section. You spend the entire first year with those same 90 students. It's called your section. And in my section, there were 30 countries represented and those 90 students. So for 12 months, I spent, a ton of time with these 90 students, 30 different countries, learned a ton. Not so much the facts and figures of what I learned, but the way to think and the way to analyze businesses and the way to approach different opportunities. Phenomenal opportunity. Came down, this was in the heart, just right in the thick of the internet. 1998, 1999, thick of the internet. Had an offer to go to work for McKinsey, which is a large strategic consulting firm. Had an offer from Lavastorm. Lavastorm was an internet startup. I chose to go to the internet startup. And people thought at the time, what are you doing? Why are you going to internet startup? Well, I signed and I had a 7-figure option package. I was worth millions of dollars right as I signed my offer letter, because this big fat option package that I got and a great salary, and we had to, we learned a lot in that business. I'll talk about it in a second. But I want to just talk about the decision points, both Apex to Harvard and McKinsey or Lavastorm. And I don't know that it really matters, is my point there. The key takeaways of this portion of my life is develop your human capital. Education is key. And don't waste time in school. Now is the time to build relationships with peers, with your professors, with businesses in the community. Take advantage of the opportunity. I didn't mess around a lot in college. When I came back from my mission, I was focused. School was absolutely critical to me. I dug in, I focused, and my dream was do the very best I can, get into a great graduate school, and then I would have opportunities. Don't waste time. Now is a fun time of your lives, but don't waste time. When you graduate, in this culture where we are, it's quite homogenous. When you graduate, there's going to be a lot of business graduates, there's going to be a lot of marketing, there's going to be a lot of English. You've got to do something to differentiate yourselves. When we get resumes, we look for differentiation. There's a lot of people that have good grades and a degree from a university. What have you done differently? Don't waste your time. Make sure that you are constantly working on building your human capital, because that's what's going to make you marketable down the road. Lavastorm, we raised $110 million. This was in Boston. We spent it in 12 months. We hired 180 people, and I unfortunately took part in laying off a large percentage of those people pretty quickly over a short period of time. I had a decision point again. Do I stay there and help reinvent the company, or do I take off and try something new? We decided to take off and try something new. So I negotiated a kind of a wind down period there, and I moved to Dallas on a whim to go raise some money and buy a company and kind of do a leveraged buyout and pursue a dream that I had there. Couple takeaways from my time at Lavastorm. Again, bet on the people, not necessarily the concept. I went there and met the CEO who had started Monster.com. The founder, his name is Alex Dunn, who happens to be the Chief Operating Officer of Vivint today. There's a story there as well. I went and met those guys, and Matt Eyring is another one. And Matt Eyring is now coming to work at Vivint. So I met some guys, bet on those guys. The business itself failed. It didn't pan out. I didn't make millions of dollars. In fact, didn't make hardly anything. I got a paycheck, which was great, and I was able to get out of there, unscathed. But it didn't turn out how I wanted. But I met some great people. I bet on those people. And at the end of the presentation, you'll see how those people are now the people I'm doing business with. So when you have opportunities, make sure you take advantage of every opportunity to establish those relationships, because you invest in those and they'll come back around. Our business model there was built to flip. Our goal was get as big as we can, as fast as we can. We were spending money on full-page ads in the Wall Street Journal. We had more swag than you can imagine. I had Lavastorm, everything. Probably had Lavastorm underwear. We had it all. We had everything Lavastorm swag, leather this, leather that. It was crazy. We could spend money really well, but we didn't have, in my opinion, a sound business model that was based on good cash flow management, solving big concerns for customers, and a profitable model. We were trying to get big fast because profitability didn't matter. It was get as big as you can and go public. Obviously, as you guys know, the bubble burst, and we had to change gears. Next stop for me, went to Dallas. September 11th hit a month after I got there. I had some things lined up, had some business prospects. September 11th hit, no capital. So at that stage in my career, I had a great education. I had a year at a startup that had failed, and I had relationships. So I had to go to work. For 4 months, I had to grind it out and find a job. And it was the hardest time of my life, without question. I'd submit thousands of resumes, call a lot of people. Ultimately, I started having breakfast meetings and lunch meetings, you name it, with everybody in my network, and landed a great job with NCH Corporation. These 4 years at NCH for me were the most critical of my career, because I just focused on building my resume, focused on building my skill set. I spent time writing business plans, found an entrepreneurial opportunity within a global chemicals company. It was about $800 million at the time. I took responsibility for all the startups, was able to business plan them, figure out if they were something we should divest or grow or make acquisitions. Even in big companies, there are plenty of entrepreneurial opportunities. My job there was to dive in, make my boss, the CEO, look really good, and work my tail off. Worked there for 4 years, phenomenal experience. Another decision point. I started to feel like I wasn't learning as much. My family was saying, hey, Todd, we're far away from home. Will you consider an opportunity closer to home so we can see family once in a while? My wife's from Idaho. She said, can we move to Idaho? I said, I don't know what I'm going to do in Idaho, but if something comes up, I'll consider it. Within a couple weeks, someone approached me and said, hey, I'm partnered with Jack Nicklaus. I run all of his golf schools. He's my partner. He wants us to go do a big development in Idaho. Will you be my partner? Let's go. Sounded pretty cool. I said, all right, let's go. So we packed up. Actually, I went to my boss first and said, hey, I'm going to go pursue an opportunity in Idaho. And he, said, what is it? I explained it to him, and I had a great relationship with him. And I said to him, Jim, I do not want to leave you high and dry. I have responsibility for these 4 businesses. I'll stay as long as you need me to stay to transition. Another lesson, don't burn bridges in your relationships. Do not burn bridges. I thought I was supposed to start 2 weeks later in Idaho. He said, okay. He said, let me think about it. I thought for sure he was going to come back. He was, wasn't happy. I thought he was going to come back and say, hey, go ahead and leave. Go ahead and pack up and take off. He came back the next day and said, I need you for 4 more months. I had a decision to make. How do I handle that? 4 more months? Are you kidding? So thought about it and said, all right, I'll stick it out for 4 more months. And I'll help transition, hire my replacement, and work for 4 more months, delayed the other deal, moved my family, and to this day, I have job security at NCH Corporation. They've tried to recruit me 3 or 4 times. Anytime I've needed a job, or if I want a job today, I can call them and go back and they will hire me for a great opportunity. Don't burn bridges. Take care of the people that take care of you. Build those relationships, and they come around. They come full circle. I think it's fair to say, at least in my opinion, that any company I've been with, I could go back, unless they're out of business like Lavastorm, I could go back and get a job because I took care of the responsibilities I had, and I nurtured those relationships, and I did everything I could to make the people around me look better. And that's a key part of my story. Key takeaways, I've kind of mentioned those. when I was at that company in Texas, I did everything I could to bring good people to the company that are still running business units there, all back to your network and relationships, and leave on good terms, because you never know when you're going to need to call on those relationships. Went to Idaho, partnered with Jack Nicklaus, Mia Hamm, Jim Courier for tennis, Mark Spitz. You know, Mark Spitz was the name in tennis, in swimming before the new guy. But you know, this is a blast. But most importantly, this was a step in my career that was a little bit more about balance. This was about my family. Idaho got us back closer to home. We had a lot of young kids. I had been traveling. We needed to go back and try something where I could have a little bit more balance. This was an incredible 4 years for my family. Unfortunately, didn't work out. We raised $35 million. We put in a ton of infrastructure. We started some ancillary businesses. We did a bunch of development. We were the darlings of real estate. We were in the Wall Street Journal. We were flown on a helicopter over Arizona to look for new locations. We had been going to Mexico. We have a place there. We have a place in Costa Rica that wanted us to come. We were the darlings. Unfortunately, creative financing doesn't work, and that whole bubble burst, as you know as well. So now what do, right? I'm there 4 phenomenal years, but unfortunately did not pan out. Nurtured relationships the entire time, kept in contact with all of my previous employers and partners and business co-workers, and they came calling. They came calling and said, hey, come back. We have invested in this new company called 2GIG. Come back, run this company. Goldman needs a CEO. Come back and run this for us. Packed up and moved to Utah. So I'd been outside of Utah for about 10 years. Came back, and the story goes that Vivint, in particular, had been using Honeywell equipment forever. Fortunately, Honeywell, GE, ADT, and Brinks were the big players in the security industry, and there had been zero innovation. They may take exception with that, but in our opinion, zero innovation in that space for years and years and years. Vivint had said, we want a new panel. Honeywell said, no, you don't. Vivint said, yes, we do. Please make it for us, or we're going to go somewhere else and we'll do it ourselves. Honeywell says, you guys just worry about knocking doors. We'll worry about making good equipment. So Vivint went, found a couple of Honeywell guys and said, if you build us this piece of equipment, just how we want it, we'll buy it, and we'll buy a lot of it. So they went and found 2 guys. 2 guys said, let's go do it. Anytime a small company or competitor came up at Honeywell, the CEO would say, don't worry about those guys, they're just 2 guys in a garage. They'll never amount to anything. So name of our company, 2GIG, 2 guys in a garage, and we've taken a lot of business from Honeywell, a lot of business. And it's been actually a pretty fun ride. So we went, they called me and said, hey, we've got a prototype. So a couple of the owners at Vivint invested in us, Todd Peterson and Alex and a couple of those guys, and then Goldman Sachs and a couple of other groups came and invested in us and put a little money in, and we went to work, developed this product. They hired me and said, hey, we got to take this to market. I came, and kind of the rest is history. We went from 0 to $130 million in our first 3 years. First year, we did about $60 million in revenue. 95% of our volume was Vivint. There were unique barriers to entry in this market. Honeywell, GE, ADT, these guys, they kind of controlled it. And if you didn't have an approved piece of equipment, then you would not be able to start an equipment business in security. Vivint was different. They had raised $250 million so they could keep all their accounts instead of selling their accounts to ADT. And because of that, they could dictate and decide what equipment they wanted to use. So they could use us without any repercussions or any lack of liquidity in the marketplace. And they came and used us. First year, 95% of our business was Vivint. Now, about 50% of our business is Vivint. So 2 years later, so in 2010 we launched, 2011. In 2012, we'll do over $50 million in sales outside of Vivint, probably about $55 million outside of Vivint, 2,000 additional dealers. And by next year, I think it'll continue to shift and we'll have more and more of our business outside of Vivint because those 2,000 customers are growing rapidly, and now we're going to go international and do some other things. So got into the market. We're the 3rd largest. We're approaching 20% in market share, which in our space, when Honeywell and GE have dominated for so long, in 2.5 years is a pretty good number to come in out of nowhere and take 20% market share. About 2 months after we launched, I got a letter on my desk. It was overnight. Opened it up. It was a nicely worded letter from the inside counsel at Honeywell. So, Mr. Santiago, you are infringing our IP, and file a lawsuit against us. So for the next 12 months, I signed $1 million checks every month to fight Big Blue. Can't talk too much about it. Long story short, Goldman wasn't about to back down. We went to battle with these guys, ended up settling, but for 12 months, 80% of my time fighting a big company that did not want us to be successful. Good news is, settled that deal, didn't slow us down, continued to grow. We had our biggest year during the lawsuit. We went from 60 million to 130 million, doubled our revenue, doubled our volume, and survived that, which was an incredible learning experience, not one that I would recommend though. A lot of trips to New York. Our attorney was $900 an hour. Every time I picked up the call from him, I was thinking about how much money he was charging us. The attorneys won that battle, but fortunately it didn't shut us down, and we were able to survive that, move on, and settle. That made both sides, I think, happy and didn't stop us from growing. Let me see here. How do I turn this? No, there we go. Here's one of the main reasons we were successful. Those of you in the security industry have been out there and done this. This is what we're competing against, is right here. They've now come out with better equipment. We came out with this, brought home automation so you can control your lights, locks, thermostats, cameras, all of that from your phone. I can get on my phone right now and check out what's going on at home. Anywhere I'm traveling in the world, I can do that, which is phenomenal. So we came out, leapfrogged them, and kind of took control of the industry, in our opinion. They've come out, Honeywell and GE, excuse me, have come out with great products now as well. But I think we're a step ahead, and our next generation equipment is going to maintain a significant lead over what they're trying to do. So let me talk about key takeaways here. Full circle on relationship. I call it kind of relationship harvesting. 2 gig. My chief technology officer came to us he was the CTO of the Department of Justice back east in DC. He was actually one of the chief architects at Lavastorm. I worked with him in Boston. The chief information officer at Vivint is JT Huang. He was also one of the co-chief architects at Lavastorm in Boston. Alex Dunn, COO of Vivint. He was my boss, one of my bosses at Lavastorm in Boston. Matt Eyring, who will be joining us in a few days, was the general manager of Lavastorm in Boston. He'll be coming to Vivint as well. Vivint is a phenomenal customer. They'll do $75 million of business with us this year and probably more next year. These guys are a customer that is, you don't want to lose. But relationship harvesting. Everybody that I'm doing business with now, I would say there's a core group of guys that I'm working with, and when I say guys, it's guys and gals, that I plan on working with for the next several years. Those things come full circle. Don't burn bridges. Make sure you invest in people. Make sure you invest in relationships. What else have we learned at 2 gig? You got to build a sustainable business model. You got to manage your cash. We got to market with less than $2 million of capital. Okay, and that's my team. That's all of the test fixtures. That's all of the molds and tooling and everything else that has to go into manufacturing. We did $60 million of revenue that first year, and we got there with $2 million of capital. There's different ways to be successful. A lot of guys will go out and raise $50 million with venture capital and different things, and then try to build a business model that eventually makes profit. I kind of like the other way around. There's different arguments. You can do it any way you want. My model that I like to use in 2 gig was, we had a great customer. We told them, if we build this, and they told us, if you build this, we will buy it. We went, built what they wanted, got some other industry perspective as well, but we built what they wanted and what they needed to solve their problem. And we've done probably $200+ million with them in the last 2.5 years. And now our other business, now that barrier has been broken down. Now our other business is absolutely thriving, And like I said, this year 50% of our business will be outside of Vivint and growing rapidly. So that's an important part of a takeaway of 2GIG, and something that when you look at businesses, make sure you have a sound business model. Capital, if you don't have enough cash, your business is not going to succeed. And that's been a big part of what we've done and why we've been successful. We built products, the third bullet here, based on relationship with key customers. After Vivint, we went out and met with every major customer in the industry, figured out their pain points, what they needed to be successful, what they didn't have in their existing solution, and then built it for them. And so we are growing over 2,000 dealers, I think, by this point, and continue to grow. International is going to be a huge opportunity for us. I think within I'm guessing within 3 years, we have the potential to be doing far more outside of the U.S. than inside. There's a huge opportunity for us. Build a great team. I had a partner in Dallas, a partner in New York, and I opened up an office here, and it was me. And when you start to go and distribute hundreds of thousands and millions of pieces of equipment and devices, it takes people. I went out and hired what I think are the best people, the best team ever. I went out and hired all-stars. I had a guy in business school tell me, his advice to me was, don't ever hire someone that could replace you, that could take your job. I would absolutely, fundamentally disagree with that. My philosophy is, go out and hire the best people you possibly can. You want to surround yourself with the best people possible. Have confidence in yourself, make sure your human capital and the skills you bring to the table are strong enough that you don't feel threatened by these others, but hire the very, very best people you possibly can. The best finance guys, the best supply chain, right? We went out, found a guy that had been working for Control 4. I think they were here last week speaking. They probably don't like me very much because we have about 15 of their former employees working for us. They've been great employees too. But we have hired the supply chain guy, figure out how to go to China and help us lower our costs, help us make sure we diversify our manufacturing base so we don't get stuck with one facility, make sure that we reduce all that risk. So we built out a very robust engineering group, supply chain, finance, operations, strategy. Guys I'm working with right now, I plan on working with in this business and in future businesses if that ever occurs. You got to surround yourself with the very, very best people. So let me go to the next slide here. So let me just give kind of a summary here, and then we'll have a chance to maybe open it up for some questions. So here is my takeaway, my feelings about my path. I never thought that pest control and knocking doors would be important to me. It was absolutely important because I learned selling skills, I learned how to manage people, I learned how to overcome objections, I learned how to work hard and grind it out when you're sweating and hot and you don't want to do it, right? You've got to build your human capital, build skills. My dad, who's played a huge part in kind of how I view the world, always told me, Todd, you've got to be marketable. You've got to be marketable to potential employers. You've got to be marketable to investors. You've got to be someone that people will invest in. Employers, investors, you name it, make sure you pay the price. I'm a firm believer you cannot cut corners. My dad, I played basketball, as I said earlier. Wasn't that good. That's why I stopped and started focusing on school. But my dad, before school, in high school, we were at the gym across the street at the church, and he would rebound at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'd make 500 shots before I'd go to school, right? He did it for my brothers, and he did it for me. I didn't do it every day, but a lot of days. Get up, there's my dad going across the street, rebounding for me, which could not have been fun because I'm doing it now for my son, and it's not fun. I can tell you that. I go with my boy, he's 17, or he will be next week, and it's not fun. It's not fun at all, but it's time with my boy. But you can't cut corners. If you want to have a successful career, and you want to run a business, or you want to have a family, you can't cut corners in school. You can't cut corners in relationships. You can't cut corners in how you treat your wife and with your kids. You can't cut corners. It'll come back to haunt you. You got to pay the price. You got to invest in the things that are most important to you. I had a really good, well, I'll talk about in step 3. Number 2, bet on the people, right? I am a firm believer that your skill set and your human capital transcends industries, right? It doesn't matter if I was in real estate. When I was in real estate, I was going out and negotiating with the board members of ditches, right? Of the irrigation ditches. I went door to door and talked to homeowners to make sure they felt comfortable with the big development we were putting in next door. The skills, the conflict resolution, the selling skills, the management skills, all of that. Didn't matter if it was real estate, software, hardware, knocking doors, doesn't matter, right? You know, you've really got to bet on the people, bet on yourself. It'll transcend industries. Balance, probably the most important thing for me. I think the hardest thing in life is to establish a balance. I have 8 kids, constantly trying to reevaluate how I can be a better dad, how I can be a better husband. You can't cut corners. When I was at Harvard, I had a guy come in and speak to us who was a really successful businessman. Probably had a net worth of hundreds of millions of dollars. I'd say his name, but I don't want to. He's a known name in Utah. Not Mitt Romney. But this guy came to the business school, and he told a story about how he was climbing the ladder. And he spent his whole career climbing the ladder. And then it turned out, and he had made phenomenal success, consulting and running big companies and all kinds of things. And he came to us and said he had a son who he kind of lost for a period of time. And he sat there and said, you know what, I spent all this time climbing this ladder, but the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. He said, all I was about was building my career, and I did not invest in my family. And time's going to come, and it came back and hit him square in the face, and he said, I missed a huge opportunity to not invest and have balance in my life. I was climbing the ladder, the corporate ladder, and absolutely neglected critical parts of his life that, you know, at the time weren't that big of a deal. He had to get ahead. He had to invest in his career. In life, you have to have balance. You cannot cut corners with relationships. A lot of my friends in business school have made millions and millions of dollars. A lot of them are on their second and third marriages, and I've only been out a few years because they're not investing in relationships. Cut corners, it'll cost you. So to make sure that as you guys think about what you're going to do, you have to be careful. In this culture, in this environment, we talk a lot about family. I've also had people lose their jobs because they put too much effort there and didn't focus and have any loyalty at work, right? So you have to find that happy medium. Pay the price, don't cut corners. And for me, it's waking up extra early in the morning so I can spend time with that child, staying up late doing homework with the other child. When I'm on a Delta flight from JFK, getting online with go-go in-flight internet and doing homework with the other child, right? You have to figure out how to find that balance and invest in the things that are most important. So in closing, I say this kind of, joking. People have told me that they think that I must have had the most expensive Harvard degree ever because I walked away from 15% ownership in a company that was just sold for $2 billion. But in hindsight, absolutely, no hesitation can say I wouldn't change any of it. The experiences my family has had, the business relationships, the opportunities I've had, the people that I've met, and the things that I've been able to participate in wouldn't change any of that for any amount of money. And I truly believe that when you invest in relationships, invest in people, and don't cut corners, it comes full circle. So appreciate your time. Why don't we open it up for questions for a couple minutes here before we turn it back over to your professor. Any questions? All right, clap a little louder. There you go. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
You say you're going overseas. Where are you guys thinking about going first?
Right now, it's Latin America. We'll head into Mexico. In fact, Chris Miller is our director of strategy and business analysis, and basically does everything with me. My right-hand guy. He will be leading the charge into Mexico. From Mexico, we'll go into Chile, Brazil. Latin America is our number one expansion opportunity. And then some of our customers are pulling us into other countries. Vivint is pulling us into Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, places like that, English-speaking countries. And then obviously we're in Canada. And then Europe is probably the next target. We have a lot of interest in several European countries. And that's going to require a completely different team and a lot of different, skill sets than we have now, and that's we'll hire up. Yeah.
How did you get the capital to start the company?
So when we went to, when Vivint reached out to these two guys at Honeywell, Todd Peterson, who's the CEO of Vivint, and a couple of his people invested some of their capital, and their investors, when they realized that Vivint was looking to use our equipment and change from Honeywell, they backed us. So our majority backers were Goldman Sachs until this recent transaction, because part of that transaction that just happened with Blackstone, we were also sold. So we are now a Blackstone portfolio company. Well, we'll be here in a couple weeks when it closes. Any other questions? Yeah.
Just curious, you said Vivint was mainly the ones that reached out to you guys. So how did you underscore your relationship with them? Still trying to market to people that are possible.
It's a great question. So the question is, with Vivint and some of their owners, investors in our company, how do we go out and attract customers that are competitors to Vivint? It was our biggest challenge. And I frankly did it by being honest. I had one particular partner who was a spin doctor, and he always wanted to kind of hide the facts. If this is being recorded, I hope he doesn't watch this. My opinion was, when someone asked, who owns you? I said, you know what? We're owned by Goldman Sachs. I said, I have ownership, a couple of my partners have ownership, and some of the investors and owners of Vivint have ownership in us. Absolutely straight up told them, right? Then I said, look what we have and look at what exists. You can choose to use existing equipment, or you can use our equipment, which is 10 times better, in my opinion, than what they have. And we'd give it to them, let them look at it, and they had to make a business decision. Is the pride of not wanting to buy equipment from a company that maybe had an investor that they didn't like? Because there's companies in the Valley that do not like Vivint and do not like Todd Peterson, right? But they had to make a decision. Do I want to use better equipment and benefit my company? Or do I want to say, no way am I buying that because that guy's an investor? And most of them, there's a couple in the Valley that said, no, it's fine. You can look at the growth trajectories of the companies that have used our equipment. And we have about 20 in the Valley that use us. And they have grown considerably. Not to say that the other ones aren't growing now as well, but I think I'd put up the track record of our customers against the competitors any day. So it was tough, but just being honest, telling them exactly how it was, not hiding from it, because it'll come back to bite you if you're not honest with your customers. About. Any other questions? Yeah.
You've made a lot of choices to go to smaller companies or startups, and I just wonder, you probably had options to go to big companies. What made you choose small startups and other things like that?
You know, that's a great question. My dad, I see him up here. When I was thinking about what I wanted to do in the first place in college, he suggested I go work for a bookstore. Barnes & Noble was a growing bookstore at the time, and because he was a professor, he was at BYU, and that was his world, was that secure, lifelong employment type opportunity. I just have a different desire. My desire has been, I love to grow businesses. I love to be involved, and you can do that in entrepreneurial settings or in large companies. I grew revenue significantly at an $800 million company. It really comes down to what you want to do and what makes you excited. There's times when I look back when I was grinding it out in Idaho, hardly making any money, working on ownership, trying to get it to grow, that I thought, man, that salary I had in Dallas was awesome, but it wasn't exciting to me. So I think you can find great success in big companies or small companies. There's more risk in the small companies. But again, you have to get into if you go to a big company, that's fine. Go in and figure out how to create value. Somehow or another, get in there, figure out how to create value. Right? And that's the difference. You got to go in and just make it happen wherever you end up going. I think we got probably one more question, then I got to turn it back over to the professor. Yeah.
Yeah, what are some of your most successful strategies against competing against Honeywell and GE when there are companies that everybody knows already?
Yeah.
And you're kind of a growing company, in the larger picture.
Yeah, you know, our entire focus at 2 Gig, because we have no name recognition. I spend zero money on marketing. We brand it for our customers. And our customers are going out selling, you know, the Honeywell brand, the GE brand. It's been a big challenge. In the beginning, people were hesitant to use us because they didn't have the brand name. They couldn't put Honeywell on their shirt or GE on their shirt when they're going to selling. Vivint kind of debunked that issue and kind of made it more about the capability of the equipment and the service they were offering. But for us, our entire strategy has been, and everything that we focus on, is doing more, building equipment that does more for less, for the masses. That's what we do. We go out, here's what they have. How do we improve upon that, bring far more functionality, far more features for a lower cost? We haven't always been able to be lower cost, but we've been same price. So then we try to make an easy decision. This one or this one, this is what you get. And that has overcome any of the name recognition and has allowed us to continue to grow. So that's really the biggest strategy, is how do we innovate, lower our cost, and create more value at the same time to our customers. Thanks again. Appreciate your time and letting me come.
So again, I know you need to run, but we would like to thank Todd one more time for his great contribution. I think one of the great things about this valley is that kind of entrepreneurial spirit that takes on the big boys or big girls, if you will, and kind of shows them that there is a better way to do things that actually suits a greater audience. And so congratulations both to 2 Gig and to Todd and the rest of his team. Thanks very much.